Hello, we're going to go over the lab on asexual and sexual reproduction. So what I did was I went ahead and popped out this and I opened it in Cami so that I can write directly on here. And then I'm going to open up this sheet, which is the lab station sheets for part A. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up here and let's take a look. So we've got 6 stations that that are gonna give us information about sexual and asexual reproduction. The first station is talking about what organisms or cells are involved. So if you read this information, you can see that for sexual reproduction, it requires 2 parents, and the cells that it produces are sperm and egg cells. Or gametes, because they each have half of the genetic information, half of the chromosomes. Whereas in asexual reproduction, you only need 1 parent, and that parent passes all of its genetic information and essentially makes a copy of itself, makes a clone of itself. In station 2, we go into more detail about how the cells divide in sexual reproduction versus asexual. So in sexual reproduction, we need to make sperm and egg that have half of the chromosomes so that when they combine, the baby has half and half and gets a whole set, half from each parent. Whereas in asexual reproduction, we just need to make an identical copy. We need to copy all the chromosomes and then split it so that the new cells have the same number of chromosomes as the parent cell. You don't want to just start splitting it and having it have half, and then the next split it gets half of that, because then it won't be an identical copy. So this process is called mitosis in asexual reproduction, and in sexual reproduction, this process is called meiosis, where you divide cells to have the final gametes or the final cells be half of the chromosomes of the parent cell. In station 3, you can write in the advantages of sexual reproduction and the advantages of asexual reproduction. And then station 4, you look at the disadvantages of each. Station 5, you're going to be looking at whether there's variation or whether there's no variation. So variation would be that the offspring aren't identical to the parents. So for example, you've got this little mouse that has a little bit of brown and white fur. I can't really see the belly, but when mice have babies, not all the babies are identical to the parents. There's variation. Some might have white spots, some might have no spots. Here you can see this one is a little more green. This one has a little more darker spots. So every offspring has slight variation. And then when you get to station 6, this was supposed to be on a card that you flip over, but what you can do is you're gonna kind of take your best guess. Do you think strawberries reproduce sexually, asexually, or both? And then you can look at the answer. So they reproduce asexually. And you're going to go ahead and write in your answer. For strawberries, you can put asexually. When you get to part B, you're going to be using a video, since we don't have microscopes and yeast. So this is the video right here. And you can read about how yeast reproduce asexually, and basically they just they do something called budding. And so a little bud grows into a bigger bud, and then they split. And so this is how yeast reproduce. And when you look at it under a microscope, you can see sometimes you can see a little bit of that process. So in this video, the person put yeast. Let me see if I can turn him off. He put yeast in warm water with a little bit of sugar so that the yeast can eat that sugar, and then they start producing carbon dioxide bubbles as they're reproducing and eating the sugar. So these images actually are really cool under the microscope because he does a time lapse. This is some of the carbon dioxide that all these yeast are producing, and it's creating a bubble under the slide. And you can see more bubbles. And then in an actual container, you'll see the bubbles start forming at the top. And he shows you how it actually is part of the baking process, and that's what causes bread to rise, because the yeast are producing a gas, and that's causing bubbles in the dough, and that's what causes bread to fluff up. But you can see right here, these are all the yeast. And what you need to do is you need to find a nice picture where he's magnified it, I think to about 1,000. And you can see the yeast and see if you can see some of them budding. And you can either draw the picture or you can screenshot it, but just circle where you see it budding. These are bubbles, so don't label that. But I know he has some good pictures in here, so you'll have to look for them. But these are the yeast cells, not this big thing. So you want to look for some reproducing yeast under the microscope, and you're going to add that picture here. You're going to circle any that are in the process of asexual reproduction, and then you're going to go ahead and answer these questions based on Part A and Part B of the lab. Okay, I hope you have fun doing this activity. If you have any questions, you know where to find me.